Which is the trending Netflix series in India right now? This one looks interesting. Let me try this. But थोड़ा movie type माहौल बना लेते हैं यार. Something like, let me order something burger. A McD burger looks good. And something to drink. Yeah, Starbucks coffee. Done. I'll watch it with my Apple AirPods. Perfect. Yes. Now the mahal is set. Hey folks, CA Rachana Ranade here, and I welcome you all to another interesting lecture which is on understanding the basics of US stock markets. Now I'm sure you might have realized in the first part of the video itself that how many US products we do consume day in and day out. If we are the consumers of those products, why not become the owners of those products? And that is the reason why, that might be the reason why there are so many Indians who are going crazy behind this as to how can we invest in the US stock markets. But as usual, before we start investing, we should understand the basics of US stock markets. That's what we are going to focus on today's video. And after that, I'm also going to talk about INDmoney app through which you can also invest in US stock markets. Now, instead of telling one by one points about US stock markets, major, these are the US stock markets, this is the timing of your, can become a little bit boring, right? So instead of that, let's try and compare Indian stock markets versus US stock markets. So the very first point of difference is that in India, we have BSE and NSE, Bombay Stock Exchange, National Stock Exchange, as our major stock exchanges in India. Which are the major stock exchanges in USA? They are NYSE and Nasdaq, right? So these are the major stock exchanges. Point number two, difference point number two. What is the timing? In India, our markets are open from 9:15 in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon. But if I'm talking about USA, US stock markets are open from 9:30 in the morning to 4 in the evening, right? So timing point is clear. Let's move on with the third point. Which are the major indices, or we call them as index? Index is singular, indices plural. Major stock market indices in India, Sensex and Nifty. Right? Everyone knows BSE's index is Sensex, NSE's index is Nifty. Which are the major indices in USA? In USA, it's Dow, Nasdaq, S&P 500, and one of the upcoming indices is Russell 2000, which focuses on small caps. So I hope you have understood all these indices in USA as well. Let's move on with one more very important point, which is about circuit filters. Okay, circuit filters or market-wide circuit breakers. Okay, I've already talked about what is the concept of this in my basics of stock market. So what is a circuit filter? It means that the market halts or stops after certain conditions are hit. What is the Indian scenario? If markets crash by 10%, there's a halt. At 15%, another halt. And if market crashes by 20%, market stops for the entire day. These are the levels of halt or stoppages. What's about USA? In USA, the levels are 7%, 13% and 20%. So I hope you have understood the comparison of circuit filters or market-wide circuit breakers in India versus USA. And one last amazing point of difference in Indian stock market and US stock market is that can we invest in fractional shares? So just as an example, I'm sure many of you might not have invested in MRF share. Why? So expensive. 80,000 rupees plus for one share. So expensive. I can't afford it, right? It would have been so amazing if I can invest 100th share of MRF. But unfortunately, that's not allowed. Okay. So in India, we are not allowed to invest in fractional shares. Minimum share that you have to buy is 1. Okay. But in US stock markets, fractional investment in shares is allowed. So I hope you have understood the major 5 points of differences between Indian stock markets and US stock markets. I told you 5 points, but what next? Can't you tell me even 1 point? You will. I'm going to give you homework. Is there a pin there? Yes. Okay. The regulator of the capital markets in India is SEBI. Now, what you have to do is you have to tell me who is the regulator of capital markets in USA. Right now, we just tried to understand the difference between Indian stock exchanges and the US stock exchanges. Now, let's dig down deep and understand the two major stock exchanges in US. One is NYSE and one is Nasdaq. So, let's compare them one by one. First, we're going to compare NYSE's major points versus Nasdaq's major points. So, first, NYSE. It is one of the oldest stock exchanges, and NYSE was founded way back in 1792. On the contrary, Nasdaq was founded in 1971, and it is world's first and largest electronically traded stock market. Now, also let's understand as a second important point that Nasdaq and NYSE both are huge in their market capitalization. How huge? I'll give you a simple comparison. Our entire Indian economy is like $3 trillion. Okay, but if I compare it with the market capitalization of NYSE, it is $25 trillion. That's for NYSE. And for Nasdaq, it is $20 trillion. That's the second largest. Okay, now you might be wondering, Rachana is such an anti-nationalist. She's saying that India is only 3 trillion and they are like 25 trillion. I'm a pure Indian at heart. Okay, but the only thing is that I just wanted to tell you, genuinely we are really small as compared to the US economy right now. Is there any scope of improvement? Answer is obviously yes, right? So just wanted to put forth the basic picture in front of you. Moving ahead, right now Nasdaq has 3,300 companies which are currently listed, vis-a-vis NYSE has 2,800 companies which are listed. Now, moving ahead, what type of companies are listed? In Nasdaq, more of technology based companies are listed, whereas if I'm talking about NYSE, more of blue chip industrial companies are listed in NYSE. One amazing, interesting piece of information as a last point of differentiation is that Nasdaq doesn't have a trading floor. But NYSE even today has a trading floor. Means what? You remember that scam movie 1992 in that those brokers make some symbols and by which they buy and sell shares. That is gone. It doesn't happen in India today. But in NYSE even today physical floor does exist, but it's just for fun, maybe just a part of the tradition, because the overall volume of physically traded shares is very tiny as compared to the total volume of the exchange. The next 2 minutes are going to be a true eye opener for you. Many of you might get the feeling like, Aila, asa kasa kai? Let's see if that feeling you get or not in the next 2 minutes, right? Let's understand what I meant by what kind of companies were listed in NYSE and in Nasdaq. I just told you like half a minute ago that in NYSE, traditional blue chip companies are listed, and in Nasdaq, IT related companies are listed. Now, what does that mean? Let's understand. So in NYSE, the stock biggies are Berkshire Hathaway, Alibaba Group Holding Company, Johnson & Johnson, JP Morgan Chase and Company, ExxonMobil Corporation, Bank of America, Walmart Stores Inc., Wells Fargo and Company, Visa Inc., Procter & Gamble Company, AT&T Inc., and Pfizer Inc. So all these are what? All these are companies which are blue chip traditional companies. Now, which companies are the stock biggies which are listed in Nasdaq? It's Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet, that's Google, Tesla, Facebook, Nvidia, PayPal, Netflix, Intel, Adobe, Zoom. Oh my god. So amazing names. But did you understand one difference? What? Intel was not listed in NYSE. Alphabet, Google, Amazon, these were not listed in NYSE. These are listed in Nasdaq. Does this happen in Indian stock market? No. So let's understand how Indian stock market really behaves. Now check out the names of companies which are listed in BSE versus which are listed in NSE. All these stock biggies. In BSE, we have Reliance, TCS, HDFC Bank, HUL, Infosys, HDFC, ICICI, Kotak Mahindra, SBI, Bharti Airtel, Bajaj Finance and HCL Tech. And guess what? Which are the companies in NYSE? NSE, sorry. In NSE, they are the same. Isn't that different from US stock markets? Absolutely. So I hope you have understood the difference. In USA, both the stock exchanges had different companies, but in India, all the stock biggies are exactly the same in BSE as well as in NSE. I hope you understood this amazing piece of information. I'm sure many of you might have really got that feeling that, wow, this was really something new, right? So now let's move on with comparing the indices. Like as I told you, India has BSE and NSE. USA has three major stock market indices, which are DJIA, that is the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We have Nasdaq and we have S&P 500. As I mentioned some time ago, we also have Russell 2000, which tracks all the small cap companies. But we are not going to talk about that index right now. We are going to focus only on top three. So let's understand them one by one. Now let's start with understanding the Dow Jones Industrial Average, DJIA, also called as Dow 30, also called as the Dow Jones or the Dow. My god, so many names. Anyways, what does it track? It tracks 30 blue chip companies which are listed on NYSE and Nasdaq. Means what? I'm sure you might have gotten confused. How come an index can track companies which are listed on both NYSE and Nasdaq? Like in India, we have Sensex, which tracks companies on BSE, and we have Nifty, which tracks companies only on NSE. So in India, it's something like there is an index which is related to a specific stock market. Is that a case in USA? No. Again, an interesting point of difference. Dow Jones tracks top 30 companies. Which 30 companies? From NYSE as well as from Nasdaq. Right? I hope you have understood this amazing piece of difference again. Right? So it tracks the top 30 companies. Well taken. What's one more important point of Dow Jones? It is a price weighted index. What do we mean by price weighted index? Stocks which have higher prices will be given more weightage. Stocks with lower prices will be given comparatively lower weights. Now, what does Nasdaq represent? Nasdaq represents an index of more than 2,500 companies which are listed in Nasdaq. You might be like, did Rachana go wrong? She said that Nasdaq tracks those companies which are listed in Nasdaq. Yes, I'm correct. So, what does this mean? Nasdaq is the name of that index as well as the stock exchange. So, like in India, we have BSE, whose index is Sensex. We have NSE, whose index is Nifty. But here in USA, what is the scenario? Nasdaq is the name of the index as well as the stock exchange, right? What is one more amazing point is that Nasdaq covers those companies which are listed in Nasdaq but which are headquartered even outside USA. Now, is this also different from India? Like in India, we track only those companies which are headquartered in India. Will not cover companies which are headquartered outside India. What does Nasdaq cover? Nasdaq covers the top 2,500 companies which may or may not be headquartered in USA. Right? One last point, interesting point about Nasdaq is that it is a market cap weighted index. So, like if you remember, I told for Dow, it gives more importance to price. This Nasdaq will give more importance to market capitalization. Now let's move on with the last index, which is S&P 500 index. The full form is Standards and Poor's 500. So when I was a student, to be very honest, I always felt that S&P tracks the income level of people, standard people, poor people, but it has got nothing to do with it. S&P doesn't track the income levels. It tracks 500 largest US publicly traded companies. Okay, which companies? These companies have to be headquartered in USA. So this is a little bit different from Nasdaq. This index is also a market cap weighted index. Means what? It will give more importance to market capitalization rather than price of stocks. Now let's understand the top 5 reasons why we should invest in stocks which are listed in the US stock markets. The very first reason is diversification. We always say that don't put all your eggs in one basket. But how do we interpret this? Some money should be invested in stocks, some should be invested in mutual fund, some in gold, some in traditional investment. Instead of all these things, if I use only stocks, why stocks only in India? Why not Sat Samandar Par? We should also invest in stocks which are listed outside India, and that can give us a good geographical diversification also to our portfolio. So I think number one reason why we should invest in US markets, number one point is diversification. Number two is that US markets have outperformed the Indian stock markets. If you want to look at it visually, see how US markets have always outperformed the Indian stock markets. So if you see, all in all, the pattern was same, but the rate at which the returns were given by US stock markets was a shade higher as compared to the Indian stock market. Reason number 3, why should we invest in US stock markets? We'll get an exposure to all these high-tech company stocks like Apple, Amazon, Google, Alphabet basically. Why not invest in these shares if I'm using the products of these companies day in and day out, right? Number 4, reason why we should invest in US stock market is to get a very amazing advantage of the depreciating Indian rupee. And I'm sure you have understood nothing. Let's take an example. Assume today's rate of $1 of INR versus USD is $1 is equal to 72 rupees. Way back in 1947, the rate was $1 is equal to 1 rupee. Now assumption करने में क्या रहता है? Assume that at that point of time, I was allowed to invest in US stock markets, okay? And at that time, some share, ABC Incorporated, whatever, that was priced at $1, okay? And today, the price of that same company, today also it is $1 only. So as an investor, did I gain anything? 1947 also it was $1. Today also it is $1. As an investor, did I gain anything? Nothing. Wrong. I gained a lot. 73 times I've enjoyed. How? Are at that time for investing in that $1 share, I have invested how much? Only 1 rupee. Today, if I sell that share, how much am I going to get? 73 rupees. Right? So that is the impact of a depreciating rupee. And the last reason why we can invest in US stock market is that we can invest even in fractional shares. Fractional investment is allowed. In simple words, I can invest in 1/10 Tesla, 1/10 share of Tesla. I can invest in 1/5 share of Berkshire Hathaway. Okay? And that's all. I think these are the top 5 reasons I believe why we can invest in US stock markets. Now coming to the grand finale, how do we invest in companies which are listed in USA? For that you need to open an account, and you can open an account with INDmoney free of cost in just 2 minutes. Even when you buy or sell shares, the brokerage is zero. So free brokerage, free account opening. How do you proceed? You just have to head on to the INDmoney app, go to the US stocks from the dashboard, click on create free US stock account. Then you will get some basic screen instructions, fill in your details. It should not take more than 2 to 3 minutes, and done. There you go. You have a US stock account, and that's where you can start your journey of investing in stocks which are listed in the US stock market. Also, don't forget to check the link in the description box. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Don't forget to share this video with your friends. Let them also understand how to invest in US stock markets in the most simplified way. Till then, take care. Jai Hind and bye-bye.